Here we are at the Springfield Arsenal in Springfield, Massachusetts, and what you're looking at is the organ of muskets, which is, as you can see, a very large collection of muskets, probably unique in the whole world. And these muskets, along with many other weapons, were produced right here at the Springfield Arsenal. The arsenal became the official arsenal of the United States. Henry Knox, Secretary of War, was the one that made it happen here in Springfield. It closed in 1968, but out of this place came the famous Springfield 03 rifle, which was used by the doughboys in World War I, and of course the M1, which is still a very popular weapon. M1 Garand, the man who was modeled it, was an employee here. He was actually Canadian born. And here we're looking at a little poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, The Organ of Muskets. He's talking about the Springfield Arsenal. It's the name of the poem. And it's not in favor of making weapons of killing fellow humans, which is a very noble thing. Unfortunately, we do not live in a perfect world, and there are times when we must necessarily arm ourselves. Unfortunately, we've been going to war a lot for other purposes than preserving our freedoms and liberties. But that's another topic. I do recommend this place. You get a great concept of history here. A lot of wonderful, interesting things happened in Springfield Arsenal prior to it becoming the official U.S. government arsenal. This was the area where Daniel Shays and his group of people tried to take over, and this would be in the 1780s when we were under the Articles of Confederation. And one of the things that led to the creation of the Articles of Confederation, the U.S. Constitution, was events that happened here in the Shays Rebellion. But here it's just a wonderful collection of not only things that were made here, but also weapons from around the United States, from the early era of our republic, the colonial days. So you see all these different types of weapons, handguns, cannons, Gatling guns, and you don't need to be a shooting enthusiast to appreciate that. Over here you see a very interesting history of the Buffalo Soldiers. These were the black soldiers that fought in the Plains Indians back in the 1870s or so. History of warfare, from the musket loading weapon to the breech loading to the repeating rifle to the semi-automatic and automatic. And again, it's a great place to visit. It's easy to get to right off of the highway in Springfield, not too far from downtown Springfield, and it is free admission. Now, it is owned by the Federal Park Service, so we do pay for it through our taxes, but at least a good place to bring the family without going bankrupt. They have a wonderful 15-minute video that teaches you about the history here and some of the interesting innovations, and highly recommend it. Here is we have a panorama of this looks like the doughboy of World War I. There we go. And then over here you'll see the collection of repeating rifles, another great innovation. Be able to put a round in the barrel and shoot it without having to put muskets in, and of course with precision, and it defines the different types of weapons. Here is me walking over to the U.S. rifle model 1903. This was the famous Springfield 03, and has the different parts and what have you. If you're in the military, you know that one of the first things you do is you learn how to take that field dress, strip down your weapon, and put it back together again in a matter of seconds. And what's unique about this area of the country, I should say was unique, is that this is the precision capital of the country, where machining was a big part of making these parts, and mass assembly and mass production. You say about 250,000 of the Springfield 03 were produced, and it wasn't enough to supply the needs. And of course the M1 rifle came online, and that was millions, several million of those were made. and I understand the U.S. government still sells them. They have an Office of Civilian Marksmanship. The Office of Civilian Marksmanship was established in 1901, 1902, or somewhere around there. And the main reason being is that our population was becoming more urban and less familiar with the fine art of shooting. And during the war, the Spanish-American War, a lot of the people that were drafted into the war had very little knowledge of weaponry, and so they thought it would be the best interest of a free people, and I agree with this position, is to make sure that the men know how to use the weapons. So they offered these to individuals and to various shooting clubs and what have you. So it's interesting how on one hand our federal government does its utmost to keep people from exercising their right, not something that they gave us, something that belonged to us long before there was a Second Amendment. And on the other hand, we used to make millions of weapons over the years. And of course, we all know that I believe it's the United States government. If it's not the largest seller of military hardware, it's pretty close up there. And on one hand, they want to see governments of the world armed, meanwhile its citizens disarmed. It's kind of an interesting perspective. Again, kind of beyond what I wanted to show you here, but Allied weapons during World War II. Here, that's interesting. That little Tommy gun there, you see, with the clip. You don't see that. Oh, here's a statue of John C. Garand. He was extra-Canadian born, a quiet genius who gave to his adopted country the greatest battle implement ever devised, the M1 rifle, and born in 1888 and died in 1974. There's probably a lot of people around here that still remember Mr. Garand. We have here, this is more of your World War II landmark M1s. Here we go. And the various models of the M1. There's something called the M1 thumb. If you don't stick that round in there and get your thumb out quick enough, you got a chance to jam it, cause some damage. Here it is. More than 6 million M1 rifles were built, most of them by Springfield Armory. Displayed here are some of the milestones reached during the production history. Some of the milestones are missing, but have found important niches in their own. Serial number 1 million, for instance, was presented to the inventor John Garand. There you go. I've fired the M1, and it's even today it's a very accurate weapon, a little bit heavier than the M16. The M16, well, this was closed in '68, and the M16 was something that came online a little bit later, but the M14 was invented here, designed here, which was a very popular rifle in the early era of Vietnam. And when I was in the service, I had a lot of the older veterans, or the older service members would say, oh, the M14 was a superior weapon to the M16. A little bit heavier, but they would tell you that it could, you could jam it with sand and it would still shoot. Springfield, here's something that I remember firing in my Army days. The machine gun, this looks like it's the M3 machine gun, but you see the M16 machine gun there too, which I think is still being used. Yeah, this looks like the M1. This baby was a pretty heavy weapon here, and very devastating if you happen to be in front of it.